Sharon, welcome to the Astroben podcast. How are you?
Oh, we're great. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. I'm always excited to talk about space.
I know. Well, I get very excited when I join a call to chat to someone. I see some model rockets behind them. Yeah, I was very excited when I see a Blue Origin model there, obviously, and a Virgin Galactic model. When did your love of space start? I assume it started way before getting one of those models.
Well, don't forget, there's the SpaceX
Oh, of
also.
course, of course. Which is the tallest one, I think.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. Mark and I signed up with Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic back in 2007. So, it's always been our goal if there really is a Santa that we want to fly all three private companies.
Wow. And well, let's start with. I mean, that is a really ambitious goal, and a very exciting one at that. Um, let's start with the Blue Origin flight because I remember seeing your flight. You were Blue Origin's Crew 4. What can you take us back to that moment when you found out that you were definitely flying to space with Blue Origin? Was it something you had anticipated, or was it a bit of a shock when it really kicked in that you have a place, you have a date? What was your reaction to it?
Well, we have waited so long to go to space. This isn't an overnight success. It's been about 16 years at that time. So we were just over the moon, excited, because we really weren't sure we were going to be able to go, regardless of which vehicle. And so we were still pinching ourselves. I think what was so exciting about it was having the opportunity to share this journey with the kids from SpaceKids Global and being so early on in the space industry for space exploration.
Mm. And it was, I think it was about 18 months ago that you went up, right?
March 31st, 2022.
Yeah,
A
you never
date
forget
I'll
that date.
always remember.
Well, I guess extra sort of memorable as well because you had a delay, didn't you? You had a 2 day delay, and then an extra long hold on the launch pad. I remember watching it and thinking, God, what must be going through their head? That's quite a lot to process.
Oh my goodness. I always refer to that as we had the best trip because it was the longest one for Blue Origin's history. Once we had the 2 day delay because of the 60-mile-an-hour winds that were coming across Van Horn, we also had the opportunity to sit uh, on the launch pad for 46 extra minutes.
And what was it like physically? Because are they comfy seats? Because they look quite comfy on camera, but I imagine in reality it's a bit of a sort of being on a roller coaster waiting to kick off. It's not the most comfortable position to be in for that length of time.
Actually, it's very, very comfortable. The seats are scissored, so they have a lot of spring to them, especially when you are launching and returning. My biggest fear that whole day was, when we got dropped off at the launch pad, there's helicopters and drones flying around, and I had a TV camera right in front of my face because I was a female and they were all gentlemen by letting me go first. But as I was walking up the tower, the first thing that came into my head was, please don't let me trip on national TV.
And obviously you were the first married couple to fly to space on a commercial vehicle, which is remarkable and very exciting. So how did that change with the dynamics of the launch? Because normally with astronauts, there's kind of a goodbye process. It's quite an emotional experience, but you were there together. How was that? Did you sort of? I mean, first of all, were you next to each other in the spaceship?
When we loaded in the capsule, I was in seat 5 and Mark was in seat 6. He
Mm.
was right by the hatch.
And how was that? Like, how did you were you able to look at each other, or were you sort of just focusing on yourselves as
The way the seats
survival
are
mode?
positioned, I was in front of him, so I couldn't really see him until Mission Control told us we could get out of our seats. And then we were together and we gave our first, I'll say, legitimate kiss in space.
Wow, that's so romantic. And yeah, and the actual experience itself, was that like that wasn't like a roller coaster, was it? Because I've spoken to Dr. Chris Bosch-Eisen on the podcast before, and he sort of said it was actually quite a smooth ascent, you know. And would you agree with that?
Um, I think we were trained very, very well with Blue Origin, over and over and over again. In fact, the extra 2 days we were training. So it wasn't like that per se, but once those engines ignite and you
Mm.
hear that horrific rumbling of the engines, and then your seat starts to rumble. And they told us in training that the ceiling would turn bright red and yellow. And that was just from the reflection from the engines below. But I never realized how long it takes to really start to lift off. And the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, is this going to lift off? But then, like within seconds, you start feeling the G's. And as the landscape starts falling behind you, and you go from the different shades of sky, from blue to light blue, and then you've got that blinding sunshine for 3 seconds, and you're off. You're taking on about 3 Gs at that point.
Wow. And and you've had a bit of time to reflect. You and Mark have had a bit of time to reflect since then. Did you experience the overview effect that we talk about quite a lot on this podcast? So that sort of overwhelming feeling of perspective, looking back down to earth. Is that something that you've felt and talked about since your trip?
Absolutely, Ben. I remember, I think it was about a couple of days before we had to leave and fly out to Van Horn, Texas. And I was walking the dog, and all of a sudden, everything was so intense. You could hear the water in the lake, the air smelled differently. I could hear things more easily, and you come to the realization that this is actually going to happen. And, it's still an experimental launch. I mean, they've had huge success, but you still have to take it into consideration. Our daughter was very apprehensive, but, once you get up there, there's no words to describe that view that you're looking back on Earth, and you see how small we are and how thin that atmosphere is, and it takes your breath away. And it's very, very emotional. People have different responses, but I would say it's the most emotional and spiritual journey I've ever been on. And you have a responsibility to come back and make Earth better.
Mm, absolutely. And I'd like to think that, there's so much obviously going on in the world at the moment, a lot of terrible things, wars, and, if there was a way of taking world leaders up to low Earth orbit and looking down on the Earth, how maybe there'd be a different view on, the actions they take.
Absolutely. I forget who said it, but it was one of the crew members on the Blue Origin launches that said if we could just bottle that up and bring it back to Earth, Earth would be a different planet.
Mm. Well, you mentioned SpaceKids Global, which you founded in 2015, so that was sort of before your Blue Origin experience. Could you share your inspiration behind SpaceKids Global and the the overarching goals you hope to achieve through it?
Uh, let's see. Yes, SpaceKids Global was founded in 2015. We are a nonprofit organization located in Orlando, Florida. And our mission is to inspire elementary school kids in STEAM plus environment education, ensuring that girls are equally represented in space. It started back when I was listening to a speaker here in town, Dr. Michio Kaku, who said, if you don't have kids hooked in math and science by 6 and 7, you're going to lose them. And I think with technology changing so quickly over the last few years, it's critical that we get these kids excited about their future. Richard Branson had a huge effect on myself starting this organization. His quote is always said, if your goals don't scare you, they're too small. And that kind of pushed me into, well, somebody's got to look at it, because no one was focusing on elementary kids back in 2015. What we try to do with our program is make kids participators, not spectators. And by doing that, we have partnerships with the ISS National Lab, where we sent 21 projects up to the Space Center. We also have a partner with Zero Gravity, and that was our essay competition. And 2 kids got to take the ride and experience the fly like an astronaut with Zero G. We've got a Name That Satellite program that's coming up. We've had Making Space for Girls that's doing a lot of exciting things. But we really want the kids to get excited through our programs, and we hope that we'll be able to create future internships with these space corporations.
Yeah, it's a fantastic goal. And I talk a lot on this podcast about the next generation, and I think young people experiencing space is definitely key to getting them engaged. And something like a zero G experience, I mean, here in the UK, that experience doesn't exist. I mean, in Florida, it's a bit more tangible, slightly more tangible, because you see rockets, and the sort of career path is a bit more possible, but it's still out of this world, obviously. What would you say is has been the most effective initiative or program you've done? Is it the essay competition with the prize at the end, or is it sort of field trips to the Kennedy Space Center? What do you think is the most successful strategy you've done to really spark kids' imaginations?
Ben, let me go back and just say something back on Space Kids that I forgot to mention.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you want to start this? Ben, back in 2016, NASA's graduating class was the first time that there were 50% women and 50% men. And when they interviewed these women, they asked them, when did you first know that you wanted to be in the space industry? And the women said it was a first grade teacher. That's why it's so important to get these kids so excited about their future, because we get their attention, and then the doors open up for any of the possibilities of space.
Absolutely. And just thinking about the sort of, say you capture a young person's imagination when they're 5 or 6, how do you keep that interest as they get older? Because it's like a lot of kids want to be an astronaut when they're young, but how do you keep them down that career path? Like, what sort of, is that something you're involved in as they get older, or is it mainly the sort of 5, 6 year olds that you sort of work with?
Well, that's the challenge, Ben. We try to stay in our lane and get them excited, get their attention, and keep them engaged, and then we pass them on. But what we've learned over the years, what surprised me, is most kids think that the only job in the space industry is an astronaut. And that's why we're trying to bring all of this to them now and open their eyes and see that space is for everyone. And everything that we have here on Earth, we're going to need up there, including farmers, scientists, physicians. Do you know when we were training in Star City, Russia, the most important person at Star City is a physician. And every morning we had to check in because they want to make sure that you don't have any rash or fungus because they don't want you to take that to the International Space Station.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And you're clearly really passionate about, gender equality and equal representation for girls in STEM, especially. How do you approach this goal and what impact have you seen on girls pursuing STEM through your initiatives? Have you seen an uptake in interest?
Well, we partnered with the Girl Scouts USA. So they brought like 1,000,005 girls to our program, and they participated in the science projects going to the ISS. I think it's important that girls understand that, yes, there is an opportunity here. The problem is that we don't have enough women that are participating. When Marc and I went to space, that was about a year and a half ago.
Hmm.
I think at that point, out of the 8 billion people on this planet, there was only about 615. I became the 599th person to cross over the Kármán line. And because Marc was a gentleman, he became the 600th. But more importantly, I was the 75th woman to cross over the Kármán line. And that kind of tells you where we are today. Still hasn't changed a lot.
Wow, that is shocking. But I think it's improving, which is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I was reading there's a predicted 3.5 million STEM jobs in the US by 2025. So these sort of efforts are crucial. How do you see Space Kids Global evolving and filling those gaps? Are you looking to do any different new initiatives and challenges, or are you looking to kind of just keep repeating what's worked?
Well, that's always a challenge, but I think the more we can get more kids involved, we believe if you can see it, you can be it. And what we've learned taking the Title I school kids to KSC has made a huge impact on their lives. Those kids, when you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They only respond to what they've been, what they can see, what they've been exposed to, which is a teacher, cafeteria worker, a janitor. Oh my gosh, you should have seen their faces after they spent the day at Kennedy Space Center. Everybody wanted to be an astronaut. Everybody wanted to be able to launch into space. I mean, we have really, I think we're onto something by showing kids the possibilities of space.
Mm. And the timing of it's very powerful as well. We obviously got the Artemis program to put the first female on the moon, and that goes hand in hand with what you're saying is young girls will see a woman on the moon that looks like them, and that's hugely inspiring. Do you think we'd ever see a kid in space or a kid in low Earth orbit? Because I imagine that would be a pretty, in terms of what you're talking about, that would be pretty awe-inspiring to see a 12-year-old kid floating in low Earth orbit.
I don't think we're going to see anything relatively soon because right now, all the private space companies, you have to be 18 years of old.
Mm.
18, you have to be 18 years old. But, with us colonizing Mars and the moon, that's all going to change. What timing that is, who knows for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really interested in your story up until your Blue Origin flight as well. Was space always something that intrigued you? Was there we call it an origin story? Was there a moment that you got hooked on space? And was it different for Marc, or was it a sort of mutual passion that you always had?
Oh gosh. No, not at all. I'm telling on myself now, but I was in the sixth grade listening to a PA announcement when Alan Shepard went to space, becoming the first American in 1961. And, as a little girl in West Virginia, that's a long way away from Kennedy Space Center. So I think the message there is anything's possible. Um, and as far as working towards these launches and the different types of launches, orbital, suborbital, I have to give Marc all that credit. He really takes me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, was there one day at dinner where he was like, "Look, you're gonna think I'm mad, but you know these plans to go to space. I want to take you, or I want to go." Was there a moment where that happened?
Oh, yeah. We were over at Kennedy Space Center doing an anniversary gift going on zero G, and it just so happened that all the salespeople from around the world were on our flight. And when we saw that they were having such a good time, Marc went over and said, "What are you guys laughing about?" And they said, "Oh, we're with Richard Branson's, Virgin Galactic." And he started to give the spill. And Marc says, "Stop. You had me at space." And we signed the contracts right then and there on the top of the roof of the car. Um, and at the time, I thought, "Oh, okay, this is good. It'll never happen. I don't have to worry about this. I can walk myself through it very slowly." But as time went on, and it just became so exciting to be part of this at the very beginning of the space exploration. And
Mm.
you really catch the fever. And I am
Oh, I bet.
so excited to have this opportunity to come and share my journey with kids across the globe and get them excited so that they too have an opportunity, because it's not just a NASA career at this point with the private companies. It's giving that possibility to everyone. It's people like you and me that are going. It's your neighbors.
Mm. Well, if you or Mark decide you don't want to go anymore, I'd happily step in and take a spare seat if it's going. And so you've signed up for Virgin Galactic as well.
Yes, back in 2007.
And when's that flight?
You know, we're all waiting. Although
Can
they
you?
are doing great. They're sending up launches every 30 days. In fact, I was just out at Spaceport, New Mexico, just recently for one of my friends who was launched. Um,
Yeah, it's like all the people I follow on the podcast Instagram are seemingly all getting places to go up on various vehicles. So it is a crazy time that we live in. Um, so you've reached over 500,000 students globally, which
just
is
shy,
amazing.
just
Just
shy.
shy, yeah, 493,000. I rounded up a little bit. Um, can you share a particular story or feedback that stands out, demonstrating the positive impact that you've had on people?
My dog's just Saba the space dog. You can cut that out. Um, the first one that really comes to mind, it was early on when I was doing presentations to the elementary schools. And we had a segment called Kids Say the Strangest Things. And this little girl was in the first or second grade, and she goes, "When you talk, I want to listen, but when my brother does, I don't."
Yeah, exactly. It's
But
that
there's,
kind of yeah, it's
yeah,
that
but
kind
there's
of it really sparks kids' imagination.
no, there's been so many responses. They didn't know that there were different ways to get to space. They didn't know about a space plane. Um, they didn't know there were other jobs in the space industry, that you
Mm.
didn't have to just be an astronaut. I say you didn't have to be an astronaut. Uh,
Well,
But I
that's yeah.
think we're making a difference one by one. I'd love to be
Mm,
able to track some of these children. They're just brilliant and see where they actually end up in their careers.
absolutely. Well, I definitely think space is becoming cool again. For a few decades, it was sort of it was never uncool, obviously, but private companies have certainly shone a spotlight again on the industry, and NASA's commitment to go back to the moon and onto Mars is long overdue, in my opinion. So as the kids get older and become students and, going to college, university, or not, um, for young individuals that want to become part of the space industry, what advice, if any, would you give to them based on your own personal journey?
Oh gosh. And I think anything is possible. And I think with determination and insight, um, you can guide yourself towards your goals.
Mm. And I guess from your own personal story, you've sort of shown that you don't have to follow a traditional path to be able to go to space. Everyone has their own individual story, um, and that's really inspiring. Um, Based on your experiences, what's your favorite part of Space Kids Global? What, apart from the Blue Origin flight, what has been the something that's stuck in your mind as a great memory in building Space Kids?
I think it's watching the children's faces light up when you show them something different. And they have so many questions and really good ones. For example, why is space dark? Well, I think we've been trying to determine that for a long period of time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the answer, to be honest. I guess it's an absence of light or something.
Well, I think that was what was so surprising once we reached. I think we got to 66.2 miles above the Earth, and the most surprising thing was how dark it was.
Mm.
There's no stars, no reflective lights. It's not like a Hollywood movie. It's dark.
Is it scary at all? Did you ever get scared during that?
I found it very spiritual. Um,
Mm.
I know William Shatner had a completely different response, but I didn't find it scary or threatening.
Hello.
Hello, welcoming Marc to the Astroben podcast. This is a first. We've never had a second guest join during an interview, which is very exciting. Nice to meet you, Marc. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. I'm very good. I've really enjoyed chatting to Sharon about everything. From your Blue Origin experience to the fantastic work of Space Kids Global. I hope you don't mind if I go back to one of my earlier questions and pose it to you. What was your experience like at Blue Origin? Did you experience the overview effect? What was your 18 months on from your trip to low Earth orbit? What's your sort of feeling about the whole experience?
Yeah, it really at two different levels. Um, One is the physical and the other is the emotional. The physical, I don't know if Sharon's described it, but it was just amazing when the rockets ignited and you started feeling that power and the vibration and capsule turns red and then it lifts off. If anybody's watched YouTube, Blue Origin NS-20 is the name of it on YouTube. You can see the excitement because it's film inside the capsule as we're launching up, and everybody's all so excited and yelling and screaming. And we're going to space, and it was incredible, just incredible. But then once you're up there and you're looking out the window, and Frank White, when he interviewed us for the overview effect, really pinned it down for us. He said pretty much everybody on the Blue Origin flight talks about how dark space is. And I have to think that's the initial impression of everything, and it's because of the size of the window you really see the proportion of everything, because you can look up at the space and down at Earth all at the same time, so you really see it all in one view. And space is incredibly blacker than anything your mind can imagine. But then when you look at the overview effect, you're looking back at Earth, and you're looking at how thin the atmosphere is, and you're looking at how fragile the planet is, and how there's no boundaries between countries. The impression that it leaves you emotionally is just really game changing on who you are and what you are and how you feel about things.
And I respect what you guys are doing as well to spread that message, because obviously not everyone can go, at least at the moment. But I hope one day everyone will have the opportunity to look down on the Earth.
Well,
Um,
I really think space travel today is where airplane travel was in the early 1900s, at the turn of the century then. And it's going to be a very matter of fact thing 15, 20, 30 years from now. People are going to go to space to go from New York to Japan.
yeah, I think point to point Earth travel is inevitable and is better for the environment, faster, and will probably cost the same as a business class flight. So it's within reach of a lot of people,
Oh,
if not cheaper.
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that analysis.
So you've got a place on Virgin Galactic, which is very exciting. Not quite sure when that's going to happen. Have you thought about SpaceX completing the trio? Is that something you can talk about?
There may be some conversations going on right now. I'm not really sure. How is that for an answer? Was that a
Well,
good
I'm
answer?
no, it is a good answer. I mean, I was going by the fact you've got all three rockets behind you,
Yeah.
models of all three rockets.
We had the opportunity to tour their facility in Brownsville, Texas, and my gosh, it's just amazing what that company's accomplishing.
Mm. Well, I think those three companies, especially, the media tends to
Look at you.
focus a lot on the billionaires behind them and the personalities, but actually the groups of people
Yes.
that work for these companies are truly amazing. And I imagine, do you think about that when you were on the launch pad for Blue Origin, the thousands of people that had worked behind the scenes? It must be quite reassuring knowing
Oh
you've got
my
the best in the
gosh.
business.
Yes, it's incredible the energy that goes into and the knowledge base that goes into developing these products. You mentioned a word, and I always get chills on an adverse way when it said the billionaires that are behind it. These gentlemen are investing lots of money out of their personal pocket in order to build this program and build the adventure in the future for the entire world, for the entire human race. Someday, these names, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, um,
Elon.
Elon Musk, they're going to go down in history the same way that people did from the 1800s that we revere today. These guys are amazing, what they've done and what they've accomplished, and the risk that they've taken, the money they've invested. I heard an analysis that the I think all three of them, well, most importantly, Blue Origin and SpaceX, the amount of money they've invested in those programs, they will never see back in their lifetime. That's an amazing investment in humanity and the growth of the human race and the growth of our knowledge base. Good for them.
Mm. I completely agree with you, and I think the fact that Mr. Bezos and Branson, physically went on their own rockets as well. That's not just going along for the joyride. That is proving it's not proof of concept. It's like total trust in your team and demonstrating to everyone that you put your lives in your engineers' hands. And I think we'll see Elon Musk one day. He has said that he'd want to die on Mars, but not on impact, and I think he will do that.
I
Um,
agree. We were at Spaceport USA when Richard Branson flew, and it was very exciting to watch, but it was very nerve-wracking. And
mm.
when he landed and when the spaceship actually touched back down on the runway after going to space, it was just an amazing sigh of relief from everybody because he did it and he came back safely. What a risk that gentleman took.
Well, and that's when we were first surprised about how emotional it is. especially when you know someone that's being launched. And as more people are being launched, they're gathering more data. I know once we got back to Earth, we were probably debriefing, what, an hour or two? And they checked everything from the moment we started walking up the tower. They gathered all this information, including our suits, the capsule, what could be improved. And all that is making it easier for the next group of people to be launched into space.
Space Dog wants to be in the picture.
Oh, it's not. It's
Have you
Love
met
a space
Sandra?
dog.
it's audio.
No, I haven't, but I'm going to take a screenshot and
Oh, it's just
I'll
audio?
definitely share it
Yeah.
on the episode. I've really enjoyed chatting to both of you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but perhaps a final thought, because you're, being the first married couple to go to space. That's that's such an interesting dynamic. How has that changed your relationship between each other? Because it's such a unique
No, you go first.
experience. I'd just love to hear your perspective on it.
Well, I jokingly tell people that yes, we went to space and we're still talking to each other. But seriously, I mean, oh my gosh, I can't imagine doing this by myself and then coming back to Earth and being bottled up with all this emotion and wanting to share it with someone, and they're not really understanding how there aren't any words to describe it. We talk about it all the time. Every time we're over at KSC for a launch, there's triggers. And when they start to count down, you just are right back in that time, place, and person when you were there. And it takes your breath away. It still does after all these months.
As Sharon said, we're still talking. No, it's as Sharon said, to fly by yourself and experience it is amazing, and I encourage anybody and everybody to do it. But to do it with somebody that you can share it with and be able to have someone to reflect all of those emotions with that you truly trust and you feel very open in your conversation, that's pretty neat. That really is.
It's nice.
You guys are amazing. Well, look, congratulations on everything you're doing with SpaceKids Global. I'm going to put all the details of how people can follow and engage with the programs and initiatives in the show notes. But I wish you well with your next mission, whenever that may be, with Virgin Galactic. Do you have any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Yes. Yeah, and thank you for asking. We are going back again. We'll be doing another we'll be doing another Blue Origin launch. This time, instead of taking family and friends, we will be having a North American drawing, and we will be taking 8 kids between the ages of 8 and 12 to come out to Astronaut Village and watch the launch up close and personal. So it'll be 8 kids plus a parent, and they'll come out and watch the launch. So if you have anyone between those ages, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, make sure that they sign up, because this is really going to make a difference, especially when they see everything and feel that sonic boom on the chest.
We had our grandkids at our original launch, and the personal impression that it made on each of them is incredible. In fact, the oldest now is now in university, his freshman year, and changed his major to aerospace engineering. It truly does have an impression.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I will definitely share details, and I can think of a couple of kids of friends that I know would be very interested. Marc and Sharon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.